1820 in Canberra, which is where we head now, because just days before it has been debated in Parliament, new legislation covering gun control and hate speech in Australia has had to be changed. The Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was responding to calls from a range of different voices from the political spectrum. So what is actually scheduled for debate this week? Well, to tell us more, I'm joined from Sydney by Katie Silver, who's an Australian journalist and broadcaster for outlets, including CNN. A very good afternoon, good evening to you, Katie.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
So just tell us about these last-minute changes, please.
Yeah, so it's been very tough to get it over the line. Now, Anthony Albanese, he wanted an omnibus law, basically that would combine reforms on gun control as well as hate speech. And he had originally said that it was an all or nothing type parcel. Now he's saying that he's going to separate them in order to try and speed up parliamentary approval. And of course, this has been seen as very reactionary policy following, of course, that attack in Bondi last month. He came under heavy criticism, particularly from the Jewish community, as well as many members of the opposition party, particularly the opposition leader Susan Ley herself. Now, one of the challenges has been there does seem to be bipartisan, relatively widespread support when it comes to gun control reform. The issue, though, is these hate speech laws. And we've seen, for example, here in the state of New South Wales, of course, where Bondi is located, we saw just before Christmas the state trying to get some last-minute reforms over the line, and we saw them vehemently opposed by the likes of, for example, Palestinian communities as well as Indigenous communities, saying that these, particularly when it comes to that hate speech element, that it was going too far. So that has been one of the contentions, and he does seem to be A, separating it, and B, taking out some of the reforms that he was keen to include.
So this being brought together as a concerted response to the Bondi beach shootings of last month, is what is now going to go through Parliament this week being seen as a considered response?
It really depends who you speak to. They collected in the order of about 7,000 submissions. There's been a lot of questions about whether or not these have even been processed and listened to. And we heard, for example, from one senior Liberal, the opposition party, saying that this was an arbitrary deadline. At the same time, we heard criticism in December that he wasn't acting fast enough, that he was sitting on his hands, and that he hadn't acted in accordance with about 13 recommendations that were provided in a government commissioned report into how to mitigate what they saw as growing anti-Semitism earlier last year. So there was definitely a feeling that he had acted too slowly, and now perhaps that some of these things haven't been considered. We heard, for example, from a very senior member of the Greens party, which I guess is the third major party in Australia, calling it, basically saying that it was all too fast, that it's too important, that some of these reforms are too important, that more thought and care needs to be given to exactly how they're constructed.
Is there a fear, therefore, that areas of what is clearly well-intentioned reform and needed reform could be hijacked politically to the point where actually, to all intents and purposes, it fails?
Well, that's definitely potential concerns when it comes to this hate speech reform. So it's been criticised, as I say, by both the opposition party, the Liberal Party and the Greens. They've dropped this one specific offence that would have made it illegal to publicly promote or incite racial hatred. That's part of getting the bill over the line. It was clear, as I say, that they didn't have the support with that clause included. One of the other interesting elements has been whether or not it should be extended beyond just religion to also include things like disability and sexuality. And when it comes to these hate speech laws, the way it would be widened out, the way I mean, of course, we already have hate speech laws in Australia, but this, for example, would establish a new way to designate or label organisations that espouse hatred, also giving officials more authorities to cancel or to revoke any visas of people that they say are likely to spread hate and division, as well as actually even customs authorities having the power to prohibit the importing or the exporting of any violent extremism material. So that, as I say, is the contentious one. The less contentious one is the gun control reforms, and they are relatively wide sweeping reforms as well at the federal level that do seem like they'll get the go-ahead tomorrow.
Katie Silver, Australian journalist and broadcaster, joining us on the line from Sydney. Thank you so much for appearing on The Globalist. You're listening to Monocle Radio.